Hey, Montel Williams here. Look, I've got some incredible news to share with you. I want to tell you about my brand new book that's coming out that's called The Sailing of the Intrepid. Now, this book is more than just an historical account. It's a tribute to the brave men who served aboard the USS Intrepid and a celebration of their extraordinary legacy. Writing this book was such an incredible story, and I'm really thrilled to be able to share it with you. So don't wait to grab your little piece of history. The book is available right now to order. You can go to montelmedia.com, and you can even get a limited autograph signed copy. Now, thank you so much for your support. I can't wait for you to read this incredible story of the sailing of the Intrepid. I'll see you on the pages. Well, hey guys, welcome back to Let's Be Blunt with Montel, the podcast where we have real conversations about cannabis, culture, and so much more. Of course, I'm your host, Montel Williams, and you know my mission is always to educate, inspire, and to break through the stigma surrounding this incredible plant. Well, today, we've got an amazing guest joining us. Not only is he an attorney, an entrepreneur, and a family man, but he's also the founder of a premium Black-owned cannabis brand shaking up the industry in Maryland and beyond. You may recognize him from his stint on Bravo's Real Housewives of the Potomac, alongside his incredible wife, Dr. Wendy Osefo. I'm thrilled to introduce Edward Eddie Osefo, founder of Happy Eddie. Eddie, thank you so much for being a part of Let's Be Blunt with Montel today, sir.
Thanks, Montel. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So good to have you here, my friend. Let's talk a little bit about your background, where you're from. It's such an honor to have you on the show, but let's, take me through, how you personally and professionally, your background led you to where you are today, and that's a path involved with cannabis.
Sure. So my origins start in Baltimore. I was born and raised Baltimore, Maryland. Went to school locally, University of Maryland, College Park. Went away for law school, up to Philly, came back, and practiced law like in the state and local tax field. And so I was practicing law. I knew my wife as a teenager. It was kind of a love story, if you will. Knew each other from 17. We got together after college, got married. We have 3 kids. And all of a sudden, I would say, 5 or 6 years into our marriage, I find myself, I found her with the opportunity to join Real Housewives of Potomac. Prior to that, I was an attorney. She is a professor. She was a professor at Johns Hopkins University. And we find ourselves with this opportunity to be on a reality show. And of course, initially, I'm a little, apprehensive, like, oh, is this like the best move for us? But the way she lives life is, YOLO, you only live once. So you got to seize the day, take all opportunities that are in front of you. And so we find ourselves on this platform, 1 million plus viewers every week, and they're kind of watching our lives. So it takes a while getting used to that part. But after a while, you're just going through, the motions, and they're getting to see the insights of your inner workings of your family, how, my wife interacts in her friend group, and it's just what we're about. Now, fast forward to me being on the show. One of the days, the women have an event. I attend the event, and apparently I'm smiling extremely hard at one of the ladies. So she terms me Happy Eddie, and it starts going through the group, proliferating that Happy Eddie was flirting with me because he was smiling at me. And so it took a life of its own online. It went viral kind of thing. And all of a sudden, this was around the time that Maryland was going rec in Maryland in terms of marijuana use. And so I knew I wanted to get involved in the industry initially, but I didn't know how I would do it. It's one of those things, you need a license, or you need to have partnerships or have some type of connection to the industry before you can enter it. But here I am with this now viral Happy Eddie tagline. I'm like, why don't I just start a cannabis brand? And so after a while, meeting with different partners, investors in Maryland, I met with a group, Curio Wellness, and, it was a match made in heaven. We kind of grew up in the same area in Baltimore. Connected with them, and I said, hey, I want to start a cannabis brand. They said, hey, let's do it. And so, I've been in the industry since 2023. I think that, people see me and they don't see a poster child for cannabis use. And so it's part of my mission and reach to use my platform and privilege to, break those stigmas that were associated with cannabis use. They think you're going to be lazy. They think you're going to, not be about anything. But then they see me, a professional, they're like, oh, he has a family, he's still functioning. Wow, if he's looking at it, why can't we look at the plant differently? And so just really trying to change those perceptions and trying to shine a spotlight on the Black and brown community that was historically criminalized by the war on drugs, and try to show a different side of cannabis now that a lot of states are legalizing marijuana. And so that's kind of been my story of the origin story, if you will. But then trying to just, lend my voice to the cause that many like yourself have been doing in the community in terms of just changing those stigmas and those stereotypes that are associated with this plant.
And let's talk about the brand itself. Is it made of flour, edibles? Blah, 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 what is it? Talk about it.
Yeah, so we started with flour, of course. So now we have flour, we have pre-rolls, we have different varying sizes, 8, 7 gram, 14 grams, different strains. We have at least 10 strains in terms of flour and pre-rolls, and most recently we launched edibles. So now we kind of have a product suite, and it's kind of like, because I'm a professional, I want to promote products that I would use. And so it's kind of like, you want to give something for everybody. You want to have a little sativa, some hybrids, some indicas. But most likely, I'm dealing with sativas because that's what I want to be energized. I want to be focused on the task at hand. And then I have kids, 12, 10, and 5. So I got to be on top of them as well. So, that's kind of like what we promote with the brand. Products that I would use is what I want to promote and give people an inside look into usage as well.
Sure. I mean, your legal background has helped you clearly deal with the regulatory compliance issues that are in the cannabis space, and they can be a minefield. Has your legal background really, have you called upon that quite a bit to help you maneuver through the challenges of the industry?
Yeah, I would definitely say so. I think just understanding how networking and how being able to understand rules and regulations in an ever-changing environment, how helpful it is. I didn't realize how helpful it is from a professional setting, but now in this setting where you have people coming from all walks of life into the cannabis industry. And so just being able to understand how the rules change, the regulations change, and being able to digest them myself without having to reach upon a lawyer to, tell me, okay, what does this say? What does this mean? How does this change impact me? And understanding the legal ramifications in terms of advertising or wanting to do programming and just staying within the bounds and the confines of what is in front of me, I think is, the legal background has helped me tremendously with that.
I'm sure, education is another big hurdle in the space, especially with all the misconceptions surrounding cannabis. How does Happy Eddie, deal with, and tackle consumer education?
Yeah, so that's actually a funny thing you mentioned. Like I go into dispensaries and do pop-ups. And so I've found that, a lot of people, some people are there for recreational use, but there's a lot of people who are there for medicinal purposes. A lot of people suffering from, anxiety, depression, or just have chronic pain. And understanding that has led me to understand, okay, there's more to the plant than just feeling good or getting high and doing, having a good time. People use it for specific purposes, and being able to educate the consumers who just come in and say, well, let me just get what's popular and say, wait, what are you trying to accomplish with, smoking cannabis? Oh, well, I have anxiety. Well, okay, maybe you should look at these terpenes that focus on anxiety, and maybe focusing in on what you're looking for, what kind of relief you're looking for will be helpful. So I think being able to understand, that some consumers are not all consumers are the same. So their education levels fluctuate and vary. And so being able to have people who provide that education to them as they come into dispensaries, knowing that every dispensary is not created equal, meaning some dispensaries, the bud tenders are just telling you what's popular, whereas others are actually educating the consumers on the plant, the product. And knowing that people come from different walks of life, it allows me to use that educational mind frame and mindset to tell them A, about the product, but then B, okay, maybe you should look at this product if you're looking for, let's say, nighttime relief. And that may not be in my product suite, but this is going to help you because this is what you're looking for.
Sure.
And so just understanding that is very helpful as well.
As a high profile figure in your community, how has your entree into the cannabis business been perceived and received, especially in your own social circles?
It's that's a great question. It's funny because friends and family are like, and I'm Nigerian by background. And so friends and family are like, wait, this is illegal. Why are you doing weed? Why are you selling weed? They're not understanding that now it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. They're not understanding that a lot of states are legalizing marijuana use. They're not understanding that, it's a plant that has medicinal purposes. They just think of the nefarious aspects of cannabis. And so, I think I don't want to say the perfect vessel, but they give it a chance to learn more about the plant, meaning, well, we know Eddie, he went to law school, he's an attorney, he's an engineer, he did engineering in undergrad. So we know he's not into nefarious activity. So what is it about this business venture that's different? And so I think they've given it a chance. They've actually taken it upon themselves to try the product and know that just trying it is not going to condemn you for life. And then B, just understanding that, it's one of those things where the more you educate yourself, the more you understand that it's just like It's actually better than alcohol use, but it's something that's helpful to some people, and it's something that's used for recreational purposes for other, but it's not something that should be stigmatized as bad, as wrongful, as, harmful to the community.
And how old are your kids right now?
So they actually, my 11-year-old just turned 12. So I have a 12-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 5-year-old daughter.
How do you explain it to, I'm sure you don't say anything to your 5-year-old, but how do you explain it to your 10-year-old and 11-year-old?
It's funny because now that they're a little bit older, they I remember as far back as maybe three years ago, I went on a field trip as a chaperone for my son, and we were at an aquarium, I think it was, but we were outside and some of the kids were smoking weed. And so it was like, Dad, they're smoking over there. They're smoking over there. But now, fast forward 3 years later, he knows that I'm in the cannabis industry. He actually jokes with me like, oh, you're going to do Happy Eddie? Oh, you're selling weed? But now he actually knows that it's not bad because I talk to him about it. And I say, like cannabis is like medicine. It's like going to CVS and picking up a prescription of Tylenol or picking up a prescription of Motrin. People use this as medicine, and it shouldn't be looked at as something that bad people do. It's a business. It's a way for people who were once criminalized for this behavior to now enter the industry. It's people who are actually locked up. They're actually able to get out now and actually be contributors to society. So it's not a bad thing. And so having those conversations are very interesting, because when you see a 12-year-old and 10-year-old talk to you, you're kind of like, wow, you're wiser than I would have given you credit for. But they understand once you break it down in terms that, the perceptions have changed, and it's a drug, just like any other drug that you take when you're hurt or you have ailments.
Sure. And do you see yourself getting involved in advocating for cannabis legalization, let's say at the federal level?
Yes. So one of my missions, just given my background, my legal background, it's one of those things where you can't just enter an industry as an entrepreneur and say, okay, I'm going to benefit from the capitalistic aspects of it. I also want to, given my platform and privilege, advocate for social change for those political groups that are trying to change the criminal justice reform initiative. So we partnered with Last Prisoner Project, and we've supported a lot of their initiatives, in terms of fundraising at the dispensary level, just because, people are going to buy my product and support it. I want them to know that we also support Last Prisoner Project, and their goal and their aim is to get people out who were I won't say wrongfully, but who were convicted of cannabis crimes, minor cannabis offenses, to get them out of jail, because it doesn't make sense for people to still be locked up for something that is now legalized in many states. So advocating for organizations and shining a spotlight on organizations like Last Prisoner Project has also been a mission of myself getting involved in this industry. It's not just to speak about the good products that I could offer, but also the work that they're doing. And so I'm trying to do that.
Does it not throw you, does it not throw you though to see that in several of the states that have passed and legalized, now there's pushback, and you're getting a lot of politicians who are jumping on the bandwagon saying, oh no, we should have never done this, we got to get rid of this. In several states around the country, we still have the same level of arrests that we had prior to legalization. Does that not throw you a little bit?
It's a weird situation, because it doesn't mean that good has not come from the cannabis legalization and changes. It just means that there's other intricate parts of, society that we have to change. Even if folks are still getting locked up at a similar rate, that doesn't mean that there hasn't been good in terms of criminal justice reform with respect to cannabis offenses and cannabis legalization. I think that it's important to know that two things can be happening at the same time. And I think that by cannabis being legalized, there shouldn't be an industry that's being created for people who weren't directly impacted for cannabis offenses that are benefiting from it. And I think that's the aspect of the criminal justice system that needs to be righted and needs to be changed and needs to be impacted, because there's people who are benefiting from this. So why are people still locked up and in prison for cannabis offenses?
This you kind of shifted a little bit into the idea of social equity, and that's one of the core focuses of your brand, right? And you and your brand. Right? You're operating in an industry where Black entrepreneurs really account for less than 3%, I believe, or 2% of the entire cannabis businesses nationwide. Why don't you talk to me a little bit about, how that plays into your mission?
Yeah, so I think just being in this industry, I quickly realized that it's a privilege. It's a privilege because there's not a lot of people who look like me. And because of that privilege, I have to take it upon myself to leave the door open for others to enter this industry. And it's not just at the level of a cultivator, or a manufacturer, or a dispensary owner. There's many ancillary things that people who want to get involved in the cannabis industry can can benefit from. And so I've made it a mission to, partner with Black and brown, businesses that see the barrier of entry as too high. It's a high capital intensive mission to get a cultivation license, a cultivation facility. So if you are, let's say, into social media, I've taken it upon myself to hire, social media companies that are Black owned that maybe are focused on the cannabis industry. If you do like security, if you do, event planning for the cannabis professionals, the cannabis industry, I've taken it upon myself to partner with those businesses, because it is their way into the industry to say, hey, we're a business, we could benefit from this business. It is not just, okay, I can't get a license, so now I can't get involved in the cannabis industry. No, there's other ancillary things that can be done to participate in this, multi-billion-dollar industry. And I think shining a spotlight on not only the industry, but on different ways to get involved in the industry is beneficial to folks like myself that don't see Black and brown people in the industry and that may feel like they're not represented. They can see myself and say, oh, well, if Eddie did it, maybe I could still get into the cannabis industry. Maybe I still can have a brand or have a dispensary or somehow get involved in that industry.
Well, I mean, what's your perspective on how Maryland and its rollout of its adult use market is going so far?
I think, we've just seen social equity licenses coming on board in terms of the dispensaries and micro dispensaries that have benefited from this last round of the social equity lottery. I think it's still yet to be seen the impact. And I've heard a lot of gripes and complaints about its rollout and how, the same people are benefiting from the social equity lottery. But I think it's just yet to be seen the right way to do it. I think Governor Wes Moore is on the right path in terms of, pushing cannabis legislation and things that can benefit and uplift the cannabis community. So I think he's on the right path of championing those causes. But I think it still is yet to be seen what the actual rollout and whether its intended purposes will be achieved with the social equity licensing and how it impacts those communities that it was intended for.
What have been some of the big major challenges that Happy Eddie has faced in the Maryland market, and how have you adapted to overcome them?
I think the biggest challenges is, there are a ton of brands. It's like it's at the end of the day, it becomes a brand, but there are a ton of brands that are in multi-state operators that are pushing different brands and different, quality of their flower and different products, and just staying ahead of the trends, but also allowing people to understand that it's not just about, the MSOs and what products they're pushing. There's brands, there's Black and brown brands that you also should take a look at. You should also look at I don't want to say to the smaller guys, but you should do your homework, and you should do your homework and due diligence in terms of what do the different brands stand for? What do they do outside of just having cannabis? And I think, and what's their mission in the cannabis community? And I think that something like looking at a Happy Eddie and seeing that, okay, they're a cannabis brand, but they also support different social activists and social advocacy groups. Oh, and they're a Black owned brand, and they're from, say they're locally owned and operated from Maryland. Oh, we should kind of want to support our own because we want to see more people like him in the industry. And not saying that MSOs can't benefit, but we want more independent operators to be in this industry, and it's not going to just turn into a capitalistic, big business type of industry.
Innovation is actually crucial to stopping stagnation and also staying competitive.
Yep.
Can you tell us about any of the new products that you're processing through Happy Eddie and what you're working on?
Yeah, so we're all, I don't know if I can divulge too much, but we're always looking at different products that could get the products and to get the consumers interested in using our products. So it's not, flower, of course, I feel like always will be king, and people always look to flower because that's what, their mind is trained to seek out and look for. But I think, different products that I would use, vapes or, rosins, things like that, are things that people may not use because they're not typically accustomed to it, but because they see somebody like myself championing that kind of product, they may give it a try. And so, vape cartridges, things of that nature are products that we look at. Of course, quality of flower is always going to be big. Edibles, I use edibles because, like I mentioned, I have kids, and so it's just easier throughout the day to pop an edible versus to smoke a joint. And different products that will be more conducive to my type of lifestyle are things that I look forward to. Partnering with my cultivator in terms of utilizing and leveraging their resources to bring my ideas to life, if you will. And I think that that's the beauty of the cannabis industry. It's not just one size fits all. Like, you can actually be creative and bring products to market. And if it hits, it hits. And if it doesn't, you go back to the drawing board and you come up with something different.
Sustainability has become a really important part or an important issue in the industry. How does Happy Eddie incorporate sustainability practices into what you're doing?
I think it's important. If you're dealing with the plant, you definitely have to think about those type of things. You definitely have to understand that, it's you you need to be focused on not only producing a quality product, but because it comes from the plant, it comes from the earth, because it is something that has to be processed. You want to be able to use the sustainability practices that have worked, and the things that don't work, you want to do away with, or look for innovative ways to change those different processes. And I think that that's something that we haven't really taken a look at in a microscopic level, but I think it's at the forefront of, as we grow in this industry, is what we need to take a look at, and just make sure that we are instituting sustainability practices, so we're not just utilizing and not.
Sure, no, I was going to say, sure, but now let me ask you a question. So you have a brand, were you sold in multiple different dispensaries, or you are subcontracted by multiple different dispensaries, or you have one group that you're working with?
So we have in Maryland, and like I mentioned, in Maryland, we work with a licensed cultivator, and they grow our flowers, because like I mentioned, the barrier of entry is high, and so we don't have a license in Maryland. And as we expand in different states, we're expanding to Missouri, we're expanding to New Jersey. Within actually a few months, we're working with different licensing partners, because that's I would say, the easiest way to get into the market. And so being able to partner with a group and look at how they have operated, and to the extent that it's not, being able to pick and choose who you partner with is very, very instrumental in the quality of product you bring into market. And so being able to have the insight, and like you mentioned, in whatever best practices they instituted, and if they have actually these sustainability practices, I can see it up front before I get into business with them. And if it's not there, I can go elsewhere and take this brand to another licensing partner. And so we've actually had the good fortune of partnering with, Curio Wellness in Maryland. We're going to partner with them also in Missouri. And we have a different cultivation partner that we're working with in New Jersey. So it's that versatility is also there when you don't have the actual license, boots on the ground, but you can find out a partner who best molds with your, ethos and your company's brand.
Sure. Well, looking ahead, do you believe that, what do you think is going to be some of the most significant trends shaping the cannabis industry, let's say, over the next 5 years?
I think over the next 5 years, I think beverages and just easy accessibility to the effects of cannabis. I think that's going to, consumers, their tastes are going to change. They're going to look for stuff that's very specific to what they're looking for, but then also stuff that's easy, I don't want to say digestible, but easy to access throughout their day. And I think that that's what beverages will come in handy, because, people are going away from sodas, but they're going into, probiotic type of drinks. They're going away from alcohol. They're going into mocktails. And so I think that the cannabis industry will see a shift in terms of beverage uses and how people are consuming cannabis and the products in different ways. And I think that's something that we are particularly keeping a steady eye on, just in terms of the different type of products that they are looking for, but then also just knowing how can we be adaptable to when the shift starts to happen and the trends start to occur.
And for aspiring entrepreneurs that are out there in this cannabis space, what advice would you give them about, your experiences?
I think seeking out mentors, which may be difficult because you don't see people like yourself, but just asking questions of people in the industry and learning as you go. You don't have to have all the answers at once, but you have to have a mentality that you're going to keep going until you get your answer, and you're going to keep knocking on those doors. I think that tenacity and that quest for knowledge and growth will serve you well, especially in a growing industry where everybody doesn't have the answers. And some may think that they have the one size fits all and what you should do, but you should take a little nugget from them and apply it to, whatever issue or whatever thing you're trying to learn. And so your network will ultimately develop your net worth. So you need to meet as many people as you can while you're in this industry and as you're growing in this industry, because, sky's the limit and new people, new players are coming every day.
Can you share your vision for Happy Eddie in the next, say, decade, let's say next 5 years and the next 10 years?
My vision for Happy Eddie is to become a household brand. There's a lot of large brands with big dollars behind them and big PE venture capitalists behind them. But as a small guy and, leveraging, my platform and the ability to enter homes of people who may not be uh, cannabis users, but they may be cannabis curious. I want to see the brand grow, and people look to me and say, well, if he did it, let's look at this cannabis. It may not be as bad as we once thought when we were growing up, and give it a try. Because I think the cannabis industry is evolving, where it's hopefully over the next 5-10 years, it's going to become a household thing, like, alcohol, like any other thing that is used in consumption. And I think that being ahead of that trend and understanding that when people look at you, they may not see the poster child for cannabis use, is going to bode well for me and the brand, and just being able to grow in different states, because you're not in different states. We're only in one state, but we could easily grow into 10 states. And so being in different states, it allows me to get in front of different consumers to allow them to see that there's benefits, there's education, there's a lot of social activism and advocacy that could occur in this community. And it's not just the dark child in the corner in the shadows that you shouldn't pay attention to, because it's happening. It just needs to happen on a more regular.
Are you worried at all with some of the trends that you're seeing in some states around the country who are trying to roll back their cannabis initiatives?
Yeah, as the administration has changed, and at one point in time, one state after another was legalizing rec use, and the overarching theme and thought was that the other states would see the states and the benefit and would also follow suit. So it does worry me, because it's almost like we will be going backwards. And the states, we were moving forward. We were making social changes. We were seeing the impact of cannabis reform. We were seeing the impact of states legalizing marijuana use, and to now roll those things back and try to act as if there's no real benefits in this industry, I think is very detrimental. And it is scary, because it really, I don't know if it's based or rooted in science, but it's more so the same social practices that were instituted in the past to criminalize this activity. And so I just don't. It worries me, but I hope that things will change and we will turn that corner, because we were trending in the right direction, if you will.
So now Maryland right now has both a medical and a rec, or is it mostly rec? What is it now?
Medical and rec.
Okay. And so you can still get a medical card, and the pricing is different. Is that what's going on?
Correct. The pricing is different. You get access to higher dosage if you're medical, no sales tax if you're medical as well. And so there's benefits of being medical, but now they have the rec program as well for folks.
Wow. And do you see, somebody told me that there's still people being arrested in Maryland for minor possession. Is that true, or is that false?
That's something that, I'm sure it happens, because at the end of the day, people still have their preconceived notions with regards to the plant. It shouldn't happen, especially since it's illegal. It's a quantity in which you can carry, as long as you're not smoking it in the public. But I think that's alarming if people are still getting arrested, because it's legal. But I don't know. I don't know if there's any truth to that. I have not seen the statistics behind that yet.
Does a Happy Eddie have a program where you're out trying to educate? You said you go personally to do pop-ups. I was doing that quite a bit. I have product in the marketplace also. And I think that's really the best place for people like yourself and me with brands to be out there meeting the patients, so they understand what differentiates your brand from others. However, are you doing any other things, like doing any monthly gatherings, or are you trying to go to places where you can actually educate some more consumers, or what?
Yeah, so we try to do a number of different activities. Like next month, we were partnering with a councilman here in Laurel, Maryland, to do an expungement clinic. He oftentimes does an expungement clinic, and so we're going to lend our voice and our platform to the expungement clinic and help those constituents who come in with their issues to understand that, A, we're a brand who supports what you guys are doing, but then B, everything, it's not always, meet us in the dispensary and that's where you're going to get your education. You may get it, at an expungement clinic, and just understanding what our brand is and what we stand for. And so I think being able to be in the different places, you get to meet different consumers, but then you also get to preach and kind of, put your messaging out there in terms of what your brand is about. And I think that segues into people wanting to learn more when they see, okay, we don't just see you at the dispensary. We see you at this expungement clinic where you're helping folks who, are trying to, get legal and get right in the eyes of the law. And so you are in different settings to let people know that your brand sees them, your brand recognizes them, and Happy Eddie is a full supporter of any type of social advocacy effort. So I think that education is more than just, what you see online and what we could give to you when you come into the dispensary, because you're already looking for cannabis when you come there.
Yeah, and I often I thought about this hard. I mean, Maryland, Washington D.C. D.C.'s got a cannabis law, but theirs is entirely different from yours. Do you see patients crossing back and forth between municipalities, or how does it work?
Well, technically, it's not legal, but I've seen folks come from Washington D.C. to the neighboring, Maryland to buy their products and go back to, Washington D.C. I met them, in dispensaries. I've actually seen folks come from neighboring Delaware, Pennsylvania, in Maryland dispensaries because, I've heard people say, "Oh, well, the cannabis is better in Maryland, so we cross state lines," or I have a medical card and I'm able to get more in Maryland. So I've seen the different folks come in from neighboring states who, may just have a medical program, for example, in PA. And so they've come to Maryland to find that relief. But this is mostly, in the neighboring, jurisdictions that is easily accessible. But I think that what DC has going on, hopefully one day, with Maryland being so close, they would have this fully rolled out, legalized program. But they still are operating in a state of the Wild Wild West, if you will, where there are a lot of legal shops in DC. And there's a lot of, crime and things like that are coming about because
but in DC you can't sell cannabis. You can sell cannabis related products, and they have to give away the cannabis, right? It was just the strangest thing in the world to me.
It's the weirdest thing that you could buy a T-shirt and you can get your cannabis, and that's odd.
You buy the T-shirt and the cannabis was free.
Exactly.
That's ridiculous.
It's odd of how it came about to be written that way, but it's one of those things where and then with the neighboring states, with Maryland being so close, you would think that, at least a program will be rolled out where you're buying the cannabis is legal and it's not a gifting type of program, or there are legal shops that can sell cannabis legally. And so, DC being so close, a lot of folks have wanted my product in DC, but it's like I mentioned, it's still the Wild Wild West where I'm a little unsure about being in DC, even if it's a neighboring state.
You'd have to partner with somebody in DC specifically, right?
Specifically, yes, exactly.
In DC, now, do they have growing licenses and they have processing licenses? Because that's the product itself, which doesn't make sense to me. So you have these licenses that allow you to grow it, the licenses allow you to process it, but then once you've grown it, and you process it, you can't sell it, but you can give it away.
But you can give it away, and like I said, DC's odd. DC, and that doesn't make any sense. Why you can grow product, but you can't sell the product that you grow, but you have a license to grow. It's odd. Like I mentioned, being a brand in Maryland and having DC right next door, it's odd. And people oftentimes are saying, "Why aren't you in DC? Why aren't you in DC?" But it's a lot of the legal, even with the legal background, I'm fearful and skeptical of entering into DC because it's a lot of loopholes, a lot of, gray areas where just don't want to get tripped up.
And, is not the gray market and the black market in Maryland still as robust as it's always been?
It's so funny. The black market will be the black market because folks aren't, as I've met folks, I don't want to say they're as skeptical, but that's what they're used to. That's what they're accustomed to. They have a guy who always has their cannabis in the neighborhood, and that's who they go to. But I think as folks want to get that education and they see that it's not just high prices, because on par, the prices you pay in a dispensary are what you could pay in the black market. You're not being taxed, you're not paying tax, but they're importing their products from, California or other states. So the products are the same, but it's now you're buying your product and you're knowing the profile and the certificate of analysis you could see on the product. So you know what you're consuming, as opposed to you're buying something, you're just assuming what your dealer is selling you is what they say it is. But the black market is still there. It's still alive and well. It's not pushing the legalized market away. It's just, it's sustaining is what I would say.
It's just as robust as it's always been, right?
Right. Correct. Because people, their consumers will still go to them if they're in a bind or if they're just accustomed to going to them. But folks are now shifting to the dispensary in higher rates. That's why the cannabis industry is growing so much in Maryland.
That's so good. Well, good. Anything else you want to add, my friend?
I think that, just understanding that, a black-owned brand, seeing that I didn't realize before, I'm always on a constant search for education, just having gone through, law school, I'm always educating myself, and everything I thought I knew about cannabis proved to be just scratching the surface. And so I think that even myself being an entrepreneur in the cannabis industry, I'm always on a quest for knowledge and learning. And so I would just advocate for folks who are entering or who are kind of curious to learn about the brands that they're supporting, to learn about the initiatives that they're into, and to look not only to, just getting high effects, but look to what you're consuming in your body and what you may be looking for. If you have anxiety, depression, or what have you, you're trying to treat that. You're not trying to have anxiety and then start taking in a sativa. You're really trying to treat what you're smoking cannabis for. And, as my brand grows and as we, grow into different states, I would implore folks to support Black-owned brands and Black-owned businesses in the cannabis industry, because, like you mentioned, it's less than 3%. And that's piss poor for an industry that was criminalized, with the war on drugs. It needs to, the number of Black and brown people in this industry, somehow, some way, it needs to be not just social equity applicants, but it needs to be folks involved in the industry that look like myself, because the communities that were underserved and disproportionately impacted look like that. It can't just be, multi-million-dollar businesses and people who are entering and benefiting from the cannabis industry.
And if people wanted to get more information about you, my brother, what's your stats? Give out all your stuff.
Sure. So I'm on Instagram. My name is I am Eddie O. The brand is Happy Eddie __ on Instagram and all social media platforms. They can check out more about our products at www.happy-eddie.com. And yeah, just follow us on social media, because like I mentioned, we're going into Missouri. We're going to be in New Jersey. So we're trying to spread the happy vibes and happy message to different states and different audiences. So I hope that people just follow the journey, because unlikely journey, but it's a journey nonetheless.
Congratulations to you, my friend. Thank you so much for what you do, and keep doing it and keep educating as many people as you possibly can, and keep busting your butt the way you are.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Montel, for having me. I appreciate your time and your space and your platform.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And for you out there, make sure you keep tuning in to Let's Be Blunt with Montel. Thanks for joining me on Let's Be Blunt with Montel. Please make sure you're subscribed and hit the bell to be notified when new episodes post each week. We'd love to hear your feedback also, so please send us your comments. Hey guys, Montel Williams here. Did you know that you could save 20% on your medical cannabis card today? That's right. With LeafWell, you can connect with a licensed healthcare provider through their easy-to-use telehealth platform. Whether you're managing chronic pain, anxiety, or just exploring cannabis for health reasons, LeafWell makes it quick, simple, and stress-free. And here's the best part. When you head to leafwell.com/Montel, you'll get an exclusive 20% discount off your medical cannabis card. Why wait? Join over 1 million satisfied users who trust LeafWell with their cannabis care. So that's right. All you got to do is go to leafwell.com/Montel and get started today and save 20%.